Short track racing, a contact sport. The laws of physics allow only one car to occupy one place at one time. Frustration spins patience out. Adrenaline takes concentration into the wall. Someone gains, someone loses, tempers flare.
I guess Mike was just getting a little impatient as usual. He booked me coming off, and the car was gone, and I couldn't hang on to it. It's just a shame. I don't know why Mike has to drive like that, but we'll get him next time. Don't worry.
Well, short track racing is, you know, very, very competitive sport. You know, sometimes you rub some fenders, bump a little bit here and there, but, you know, it's very, very competitive contact sport.
But just what does drive that man in black?
Well, we're just racing. You know, you get racing hard, and you know, we just bumped there a little bit. As you see, when me and Jay got together, we both spun, so I don't think that's anything intentional. Things happen, and everybody's got their own viewpoint of what happened, and they got the right to it.
AC Delco presents the Great American Racing Series. This is the Badgerland 150 from the historic Milwaukee Mile at West Allis, Wisconsin. Whenever you come to this racetrack, you become a part of that great legacy that began at the turn of this century with drivers like Barney Oldfield and Ralph De Palma, and continued right on to the mid part of the century, into the 1950s, and the great stock car wars here staged by drivers like Norm Nelson and Parnelli Jones. And so to 1993. Hi, everybody. I'm Larry NUBER. And in 1993, ASA returns, and drivers like Benson, Eddie, Allen, and homestader Jay Sauter become a part of that tremendous Milwaukee Mile legacy. Now, this has already been a tremendous season. There's been some controversy, 2 races, 2 winners, but it's been one for the record books already, Rob Albright.
It really has, and if you want high drama, stay tuned today, because some of the guys that you expect to see starting up in front, they're going to be well back in the pack.
By the way, my thanks to Willard Scott and his memories. No, we're not trying to remember him today. We are also celebrating Mother's Day, and we thank all of the very important ladies in our life. But back to today's race. We mentioned Jay Sauter. He's had a very good season. He's led more laps than anybody else so far.
Yet he's well back in the point standings. That late race crash at I-70 Speedway, a mediocre performance at Columbus. He wants to win for Mom and for the memory of Alan Kulwicki, his hero.
Rob mentioned we have 44 starters today. This is one of the largest fields in the history of the Milwaukee Mile. But the man who's taking the very first ride today is our own Ralph Sheen.
Well, gentlemen, since John Benson Jr. and I did not get a chance to get our boutonnieres, we'd like to take the opportunities to wish our moms a happy Mother's Day on this special afternoon here in Milwaukee. But also, let's talk a little bit about pole position, Johnny Benson Jr. This is the 3rd one you've had in a row now. What's your secret to going fast in qualifying? Is there something special that you do?
No, you know, we just try to get the car as comfortable as possible and, you know, see if we can't put Port City Racing, Delco Freedom Battery car on a pole.
3 in a row, he has done that here now, and normally you would see Mike Eddy lined up alongside of him. That's very common. He's not here. We're going to show you where he is. Now, this is a little bit tricky. This is called golf cart cam, and we're going all the way back to position number 33 to show you where Mike Eddy's car is pitted at. Now, look at all the people that Mike Eddy is going to have to pass this afternoon. There goes Jeff Neal's car. Here comes Scott Hansen's machine. There's Joe Shear. There's Kenny Schrader. This, folks, is what you call a long afternoon at the Milwaukee Mile. We are going as fast as we can down pit lane. He has got 33 cars in front of him, including Larry Phillips. Here is Tom Jones' machine, Brad Loney, and a few others. And all the way back down here is car number 88. And the driver of that machine is no other than Mike Eddy. Mike getting a quick talk from his crew. Mike, you got a long day in front of you, 33 cars. How do you pick these guys off?
Well, you just take your time, and you'll get to the front sooner or later. There'll be a lot of yellows today.
But you know, gentlemen, once he gets all the way to the front, he still has to get around Johnny Benson Jr.
Obviously, all that video at the top of the show was reference to the last televised race at Odessa. The weather here today, 77 degrees, 68% humidity. The weather people originally had forecasted rain, but it's mostly sunny here today. And after that Odessa race, by the way, a lot of people, including Mike Eddy, even me, took some heat. But in the final analysis, I think there was a lot more neutrality there than people suspected. Ralph is standing by on the starting grid with a couple of celebrities.
And Larry, they're both very good fans of ASA racing. I have with me Miss Wins, Lisa Dickinson, and star of stage, screen, and television, Tristan Rogers. Lisa, how about you get us started here this afternoon?
Ladies and gentlemen.
And Tristan?
Let's go racing.
So Tristan Rogers emphatically fires us off as 45 cars roar to life here on the start-finish line, the front stretch at the great old Milwaukee Mile. We'll be back with the start of today's ASA race after this. The 1993 AC Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it wins, it works. And by Mr. Goodwrench, the GM expert at participating GM dealerships. And by Armor All. There is a fountain of youth, and we own the patent. The official grid, some 45 cars strong, is now rolling back to Odessa. Rob, I think a lot of people were surprised at the final results of the analysis of that. We'll talk a little bit about that, but here first is the starting grid for today's race.
3 events, 3 poles. Johnny Benson Jr. in the Delco Freedom Batteries, Port City Chevrolet, and outside row number 1 in the Carbon Metallic, Wisconsin proud Coca-Cola Ford Thunderbird, Glenn Allen Jr.
Starting third in the Delco Voyager Batteries, KC Motorsports Chevrolet is homestader Jay Sauter. And he is flanked by LaGrange, Ohio's Ken Stauffer. He's driving the Flex-Tech Kinetic Engines Thunderbird.
Targeting a career first ASA win today from Lake Villa, Illinois in the Split-Fire Spark Plugs Ford Thunderbird, Jeff Neal on the inside of row 3. And starting 6th, welcome home, Ted Musgrave from Denver, North Carolina in the Schwister Ford Thunderbird, car number 99.
Today's 7th starter has had the best rookie finish of the 1993 season. He's Oshawa, Ontario's Randy McDonald in the NTN Chevrolet. And on the outside in the Yoder Ford Knights Inn Thunderbird is Todd Forbes.
Starting from the 9th position, the second surprising rookie to qualify in the top 10. Car number 19, Rick Beebe from Overland Park, Kansas in the Caroline Motorsports Chevy. And Scott Hansen in the Cat's Pride, let's call it the Kitty Litter Chevrolet, starts 10th in car number 53.
This proved to be one of the toughest races in ASA history to make. Here's the rest of the starting grid. Joe Shear and Harold Fair share row 6. Ken Schrader and Dennis Vogel, cars 52 and 51, side by side in row 7. In the 15th and 16th starting positions, Bob Seneca, Russ Gamester, yes, the rookie out qualifying his veteran teammate Gary St. Amant. 2 very strong runs for the Wins cars, and Dave Watson starts on the outside of row number 9, racing for kids in the Shriners Hospital. Row number 10, now we're getting inside, or just barely outside the top 20 cars, is scheduled to be Joe Knott and Pat Bordeaux. Joe Knott, of course, in the number 48 car out of Ohio, and Pat Bordeaux, the driver from Michigan. Now here is the highlights of many of the drivers in the rest of the field. Steve Holzhausen, he just missed the top 20. He's 21st. Steve Carlson, another strong racer who's had some good finishes lately. He's in the top 30. Mike Eddy and Tony Raines, as you saw by Ralph's tour of the starting grid, are way back in 33rd and 34th starting positions. But very quickly here, the other drivers who made this race: Mike Miller, Tom Harrington, Larry Moore, Larry Phillips, Brad Loney, Tom Jones, Bruce Lee, Dennis Lampman. There's a story there which we'll be developing a little later. Ray Skillman, who crashed so severely in the last televised race, John Lemke, Tony Roper, Terry Wenny, Jim Cooper, Larry Conroy, rookie who haven't seen too much out of Portage, Indiana, David Anspaugh, John Freeman, Alec Pincinel from Windsor, Ontario, Roger Evans, Yale Conley, Jerry Churchill, and Danny Darnell.
Larry, a very interesting turn of events as Terry Wendy has brought the Clark Oil Chevrolet on pit road, a flat right rear tire prior to the start of this race. It's been replaced. He'll now rejoin the grid in his scheduled starting position. But in fact, the fastest qualifier is not on the pole. As a result of Joe Shear missing first-round qualifying, he was the fastest qualifier, but he'll start 11th today, celebrating his 50th birthday. So along with Mike Eddy's black car number 88, we'll watch for the black car number 36 of Joe Shear, the fastest qualifier, in fact, We'll start back on the inside of row number 6.
Scheer was the only driver to average in the 114-mile-an-hour range in qualifying for today's race. The second fastest overall qualifier was your pole setter, Johnny Benson Jr. But because of a little bit of misfortune to the Wisconsin native, Benson racks up pole number 3 in a row.
Benson Chevy and a Ford on the front row. 27 Chevys, 10 Fords, 6 Oldsmobiles, and 2 Pontiacs on the starting grid. And there's Jay Sauter with a different colored number this weekend.
Yeah, and that is respects to a new sponsor. Delco Voyager Batteries has sprouted on the side of the number 1 car. There are a couple of cars in the field that have sponsors of the week. Glenn Allen Jr., for instance, Carbon Metallic, and Wisconsin Proud Coca-Cola Classic are helping them out this weekend. Johnny Benson Jr. has also got Freedom batteries on the car. Supposedly that is a season-long deal. All the other sponsors return. We have 45 cars getting ready to rumble and roar off of corner number 4. Here comes Johnny Benson bringing the field around. Glenn Allen Jr. gets a little bit of jump, but Benson accelerates going into corner number 1. It's fender to fender in the first turn. Can both cars get through that narrow line? Through turn number 1, the field seems to make it. The front runners separate just a little bit. Allen falls down into place, and Benson looks like he's going to lead lap number 1.
Youth in the first 3 positions. Johnny Benson Jr. coming to his own in 1992, winning 4 times. Glenn Allen Jr. has won twice in Columbus, Ohio, and Winchester, and he chases Benson to the start-finish line.
Heavy metal music in the early laps here at the Milwaukee Mile. In the pack, cars continue to run 2 and even 3 abreast as John Benson Jr., who near the end of the 1992 season and certainly beginning here in 1993 has been Mr. Speed of ASA. The former king was this man in the black 88.
There he is, Mike Eddy. Only moved up 2 spots so far as a lot of traffic confronts him. He'll be patient. He said he expected a lot of yellows. He's now moving into the 30th position, moving to the low side of Tony Raines.
When I said former king, I didn't mean that Mike Eddy no longer is the champ. He definitely is, but Benson has been a little bit faster race after race than what Eddy has, but the 2 of them have been so dominant, hardly makes a difference. Joey Knott is in that group. That's Eddy moving to the inside of Brad Loney in the number 33, the veteran Larry Moore in that white number 41, Dennis Lampman, who had some very sad news in his family. Again, we're going to be chronologuing that a little later today, is following Eddy, and Lampman right now knows that Eddy is going to be making his way to the front, and Dennis Lampman, who knows this track very well, and we have a challenge up front. Glenn Allen Jr. moving to the inside of Benson.
Glenn told us this morning he wanted to lead the first lap of the race. He didn't get that accomplished, but he's got the advantage on the low side of the racetrack. A brand new golden engine under the hood of this machine. The other one expired on his qualifying lap. They got it in time for 1 practice lap, and he'll lead this time pass.
So the state of Wisconsin splashed on the hood of Glenn Allen Jr. leads a lap here, at least 1 at the Milwaukee Mile. We mentioned that the Carbon Metallic and Wisconsin Proud, the Coca-Cola Classic people who wanted to be a part of this race, were gracious enough to become a part of the Leroy Troop operation, and he in turn was extremely gracious in allowing them to get on the car. They came here on a rookie's car this year, but some very unfortunate circumstances befell Brett Bell, and the end result is the red state of Wisconsin is on the car leading the race right now, at least.
Look at the gap they've already created between themselves and the third running Jay Sauter, who also is by himself on the racetrack. And this is something that we suspected, is that someone might try to make it a runaway, but I thought it would be the other red and white car.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised too, because this team, the Leroy Troop team, as we look to the Jay Sauter car, and we've got a car upside down, it is Ray Skillman in corner number 1. For the second television race in a row, Ray Skillman has been involved in a spectacular ASA crash on the main straightaway.
And you can see Ray unhooking the window net in car number 27. He wants quickly out of that car. He took a hard ride into the outside retaining wall. The left front tire still spinning as that car sits upside down.
And you know what?
Immediately to his assistance.
It looked like that tire stopped and somebody touched the brake. And I'm guessing Ray Skillman, while he sits there upside down in corner number 1, may have put his foot on the brake, stopped the wheels from going around.
Ray Skillman, a racing businessman from south of Indianapolis. He is a 14-hour-a-day guy at the job. This year he said, guys, I'm going to cut back to only a 8-hour day and spend the rest of my time working on the race car. He has quite a facility there where these machines are built and prepared for himself to drive. and this is not the way Ray Skillman wanted to start the 1993 racing season.
It is so unusual for an ASA car to get upside down. There's Skillman. He comes into contact with John Lemke. Skillman spinning out of control, hits the outside wall, and the car simply lifts up when he hits the wall. Most unusual.
He hit the wall very hard on the passenger side. I'm surprised that he's able to climb out under his own power. And look,
he's moving right away.
Before that car even came to rest, he was reaching for the window net.
There's another look at it. It was rookie John Lemke coming together with Skillman, and Skillman ends up looking like Pancho Carter or Rick Mears at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, pirouetting on his top, going through corner number 1.
And you know, he was probably traveling, Larry, at between 115 and 120 miles an hour when he made contact, so there was a hard ride. There is Ray Skillman out conferring with some of the track officials down in turn number 1.
We mentioned briefly about his accident at Odessa on the high banks. It was an early race incident just like this, and in that particular accident, he simply collided with Alex Pincino, and the body was torn completely off the car. Ray Skillman and crew have done a lot of work to get this car back into operating order for this race, and it ends early, unfortunately, after about 4 laps under green. We'll be back to Milwaukee after this. This is the American Speed Association at the Milwaukee Mile. You're looking at a crash scene above corner number 1, which has slowed the pace in the early laps of this race. Now, we mentioned that Ray Skillman is involved. You're looking at John Lemke. Skillman is driving the same car today that he wrecked at Odessa, but it wasn't as easy as simply loading this car on the trailer and bringing it to the race. Now, here was the scene at Odessa, the last television race, but listen to all he went through to get here this weekend.
I've never experienced a body coming off of a race car. It just got real light inside, like someone had opened a sunroof.
Now, do you consider that to be a vulnerable part of the car?
No, not at all.
And why is that, Ray?
Well, the roll cage, that's what protects all of us in these race cars. The fiberglass, it's just along for the ride to carry sponsors' names and to form an image of an Olds Cutlass or a Thunderbird or whatever we're running. The damage was a lot worse than what we thought was there. We got the car home, started assessing what was wrong, and we had torn up a lot of crucial parts to the car. We'd bent part of the rear housing, we'd broken the rack in the car, we'd damaged some down bars in the car. They did their job. They held well. We bent the front snout of the car. We didn't realize that it was bent. We thought it was tweaked a little bit, but it's bent enough that we're going to have to send it back to our chassis builder. I guess it's part of the game, but it's a very expensive job is what it is. You know, we have to pay for this stuff ourselves, and the bodies are quite inexpensive compared to a Bush car. A Bush car, we'd be looking at $7,000 or $8,000 to replace the body. We can replace this body for $2,300 or $400.
Another $2,300. You see Ray Skillman's car now finally being loaded on a couple of wreckers. They don't want to damage the car any more than what it was as a result of the crash, but the car landing on its lid, and because of the shape and size of contemporary stock cars, it's almost like a turtle getting upside down. And Ray Skillman, for the second television race in a row, has a race that lasts less than 10 laps, and a severely damaged race car, the same race car, returns to the pits on a couple of wreckers. Again, a happy Mother's Day to everyone, including all those involved with Ray Skillman. He's okay, everybody. There are a lot of subplots going on here today that relate to Mom's Day.
Oh, they certainly are. The young man leading the race right now is the driver who started second in the carbon metallic Wisconsin Proud Ford Thunderbird, and we'll talk about him in a minute.
This is Dennis Lampman. Today, you'll see the name Race Fans Unlimited on his car, in addition to his other sponsors on the rear quarter panels. All the money that Race Fans Unlimited raise actually go to charity. And just this morning, they found out that Dennis Lampman's wife has been stricken with the disease lupus. And our wishes and prayers certainly go to her. And Dennis will be driving with Schwister Ford on the car, as well as Race Fans Unlimited. And this money will be going to the Lupus Foundation, which eventually will be a contribution to help Dennis's wife in her recovery.
Johnny Benson Jr., his grandmother, Judy, who is 83 years of age. This is the first time, and as long as anybody can remember, that she will not be at the Milwaukee Mile. So we'd like to say Happy Mother's Day to her. We saw the machine right in front of his. That's the Glen Allen car. His car owner, Leroy Troop, lost his mother this week, and we extend our condolences to that family as well.
But right now, the number 15 car is flying proud for the memory of all those people. He's running first. He's leading an ASA race, an American Speed Association. He takes the green flag on lap number 15. Glenn Allen leads with Johnny Benson Jr. second. And Mike Eddy, we'll keep documenting it for you, is officially 23rd. He was stuck in heavy traffic, and he took his time to this point.
Bob Seneca moving up through the field in car number 84 as Ted Musgrave now challenges Johnny Benson for second position. A great restart for Benson, or for Musgrave. Got the jump on Jay Sauter, and you can see now Sauter has fallen several car lengths back of Musgrave's number 99.
And another crash, this one involving the Wins Lumina of Russ Gamester. Rookie Russ Gamester, that is midway between corners 3 and 4, and he's had severe contact with the outside retaining wall. Gamester had his best race of his American Speed Association career a week ago, and they were very pumped up about qualifying. He performed quite well. It was a bit of a surprise, although the crew felt they were in good shape. He was 16th quick this weekend.
He had great runs at both Odessa in the Missouri 250. Started 34th and finished 17th. The Buckeye 300 last weekend that was not televised, he started in 14th position, finished a credible 12th, and that ranks him 11th overall and the leading rookie coming into this race.
A very disappointing moment for this young driver. Things were really beginning to turn around for them, and Russ was driving with as much confidence as he ever has. And the biggest point, as you just mentioned, Rob, is that he had taken over the lead in the rookie point standings, a very lucrative American Speed Association rookie point standings. Russ is moving around inside the car, so he's okay, but the car is sitting down on the left side. And we've got just the end of this.
You can see the car has already struck the outside retaining wall. No indication of what might have happened. It obviously spun completely around and hit on the driver's side, predominantly the left rear corner of that automobile, but the entire rear of the car has almost been severed from the remainder of it. It appeared that Russ was a bit shaken, but I'm sure okay.
This is the Wins Lumina, or as Tristan Rogers pronounces it, the Lumina of Russ Gamester. You can see Russ walking around there, a former open wheel champion, national champion, and we've mentioned Russ came into today leading the rookie points. That surprised some people, although they knew that this driver had immense experience. You can see he came into today's race leading by only 9 points over Rick Beebe. Randy McDonald, who had a terrific race last week in Columbus, finishing in 6th, was ranked 3rd. A.J. Cooper, as opposed to Jim Cooper, was 4th. And Saginaw, Michigan's Pat Bourdeau was 5th.
Probably the only surprise in that group is A.J. Cooper, because he has not any championships to his credit. The other drivers do.
After 16 of 150 laps, and Glenn Allen Jr. is getting the privilege of racking up some leading laps here under a lot of yellow flags early on. It's Allen, Benson, Jay Sauter 3rd, Ted Musgrave 4th, and Randy McDonald, rookie Randy McDonald 5th, Joe Shear 6th, Rick Beebe, another one of the rookie challengers, 7th, Kent Stauffer, who qualified well again this weekend, is 8th, Scott Hansen 9th, and Todd Forbes running in 10th position. Early laps here, most of which have taken place under the yellow flag.
Of all the drivers in this field, Mike Eddy has led the most laps in ASA competition on the Milwaukee Mile, 788. He's led in 16 different events. And there's the second place car number 21 of Johnny Benson Jr., who is the current AC Delco Challenge Series points leader.
And in laps led for this particular season, as we will take time out to look at the AC Delco Challenge Series points, Johnny Benson Jr., the points leader right now, followed by Mike Eddy in the AC Delco taking the challenge rankings. Tony Raines is 3rd, Tom Harrington 4th, and Jeff Neal 5th. Back to this laps led story. Jay Sauter has led more laps than anybody else this year, followed closely by Benson Jr. But when Glenn Allen Jr. took the lead in today's race, it was his first leading laps of the 1993 season. So we continue under the yellow bunting. That is caution on the speedway. We've had a couple of very serious looking crashes. No driver injuries. We'll be back. This has been a very tough weekend on the ASA competitors here at West Allis, Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Mile. This is the Badgerland 150. We would like to remind you that this is a telecast and a copyrighted production of Group 5 Sports, a division of Group 5 Sales Incorporated. and that any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission, or any other engine parts for that matter, of this telecast without the written consent of Group 5 Sports is strictly prohibited. Looking at veteran Harold Fair there, the number 81 car, he began to mention that this has been a really tough weekend for crashes here in the Milwaukee Mile inside the American Speed Association. Several drivers have crashed during practice. There is a look at the remains of Russ Gamester's car. You can see the Wins Lumina has severe damage to the back. There's damage to the front as he whacked the outside wall with the driver's side, but apparently that safety net keeping the driver from injury.
We were looking at Harold Fair because he is battling adversity today, racing with a cast on his right arm, suffered in a crash at I-70 the last time we were with you.
We're getting ready to go back to green. Among the other drivers who crashed this weekend in practice and qualifying were Mike Eddy, back to green. Glenn Allen still leads, where Mike Eddy, rookie Brett Bell, whom we mentioned earlier in the Wonder Bar Racing Thunderbird with Besco and Wisconsin Coca-Cola on the side, and Jerry Churchill. And they were all very severe crashes. This is a tough place for these ASA cars. The track is flat. There is no banking to catch you once you get out of control.
They're the top three: Glenn Allen Jr., Johnny Benson. Watch them come off turn number 4. The car seems to work better from this fan cam perspective as the leaders flash by one more time. Those cars work better down on the bottom side of the racetrack than does Musgraves. He seems to have a horsepower edge going into the corners, but they're able to pull away from it exiting turns 2 and 4.
It's also a Ford versus Chevy battle as we watch these two red and white cars trade paint for first place. Let's go down to Ralph and hear from Ray Skillman.
Ray, this is a conversation we're having too often. What happened to you this time?
Well, we were biding our own time, just riding in a pack of cars, and there was nowhere to go. And somebody got a little over anxious in the back and ducked under us and turned us around and got us into the wall at probably the highest point of speed on this racetrack. And after that, you saw more than I saw.
The Indianapolis car dealer involved in the Indianapolis auto auction down there, a man who's working very hard to be a race driver. He wants to run in the American Speed Association, and he's had an expensive first month and a half of the season. Back up front, Rob, this is interesting. Benson appeared to be superior car initially, then after a couple of laps, Glenn Allen picked up momentum. He took the lead, and now Benson moved back up. Here comes Joe Scheer.
Joe Scheer has gotten by Jay Sauter for 4th position. Joe, of course, was the fastest qualifier, started 11th because he did that in round 2, and now begins to work his way toward the front, but he's got a lot of ground to make up to catch that fast-running front 3.
Incidentally, John Lemke, who was involved in that crash with Ray Skillman, has pitted several times. There he is on your screen right now. The damage to the right front, a result of contact with Ray Skillman.
That's the Valvoline Thunderbird. Lemke has decided not to run for Rookie of the Year this season. He'll run a handful of events and go at it next year. Johnny Benson now eases to a slight advantage. We've begun calling him Bonsai Benson because he makes heart-stopping qualification runs and likes to do the same thing through the endurance, through the entirety of a race.
As you can see, the Wings crew is working feverishly on the number 11 machine of Russ Gamester. Now, Russ, what happened to your entry?
Well, we were going on backstretch. I'll tell you, the Winds Extend Chevy Aluminum Collins Motorsports was running good. We blew an oil line just going into 3, and the car turned so quick on me. You know, I didn't have nothing to do, but I was lucky I didn't take nobody else out. But just started smoking a little bit before the yellow. And they thought maybe it was coming out the overflow, but the oil line come off the pan, and there's nothing I could do with it. You know, it spun around so quick, and we hit the wall, but we'll be back.
Severe front damage to the car, gentlemen. The crew is trying to get it repaired. Hopefully, Russ will be able to return for a few laps.
Yellow flag is out. We've had an incident in corner number 2 involving Alec Pinsino from Windsor, Ontario. Appeared to be a one-car incident. Alec was another one of the drivers who crashed during practice and qualifying this week. As we told you, this was a slugfest.
Alec is a relative newcomer to Major League stock car racing, making the trek to the Midwest for the American Speed Association AC Delco Challenge Series and finding the sledding tough in the early going of 1993.
There's John Benson. Now he leads. Glenn Allen led for a while. Benson led earlier. It's like a game of leapfrog. Let's see who it is the top frog when we come back. Back at green at Badgerland, 150 in the historic, legendary, always exciting mile racetrack here in the suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are zeroing in right now on the black number 36 of Joe Shear. The man who has logged a lot of miles at this racetrack appears to have the #1 space shuttle so far today's race.
Joe runs only a handful of ASA events each season, always comes to the Milwaukee Mile, always runs well, but never seems to have enough to get the job done. He was fast all day yesterday in practice and qualifying, and proving it was no fluke, he's going after Glenn Allen for that second position.
In the spring Milwaukee race a year ago, Joe Shear started the race in 8th. He was the 8th fastest qualifier that day. He finished 4th. Now he has moved up to 2nd place, having started this race in 11th, although remember, he was the fastest qualifier. So Joe Shear, in that seldom seen Pathfinder Lumina in ASA, is the fastest car to this point in today's race, 33 laps into a 150-lapper.
Meanwhile, Mike Eddy has come from 33rd on the starting grid, some 33 laps into this race to run in 15th position. He's picked up 18 spots. Scott Hansen has been on pit road, one of the pre-race favorites in the Cat's Pride Chevrolet, and now Joe Shear is challenging Johnny Benson Jr. for the point.
There was one other little piece of drama associated with Joe Shear, and the astute viewers or those who are Joe Shear fans might have noticed that Joe Shear, during one of the lengthy yellows, pitted. And look at Shear. He just handles right underneath John Benson Jr. And Joe Shear is, would you say, off to the races? Shear pitted during one of the lengthy yellows. A fellow competitor had cited that he was leaking oil. He came in, it was checked. ASA officials said there was not a problem, so he was allowed to go back out into position, and at the time, that was about 7th on the grid.
And there's Scott Hansen behind the wall. We had mentioned him earlier, bringing new sponsorship, the Cat's Pride kitty litter people. Now, what does that have to do with racing? Well, it's also used for oil dry on the racing surface, so they decided to promote their product through this driver in this racing series for 1993, at least in this event.
But up front, the Pathfinder Lumina of Joe Shear continues to set the pace as he streaks underneath the corporate decorative signs and the sponsors of this race and racetrack around corner number 1 and 2, down the back straightaway, around 3 and 4. When you see those signs, you know the drivers have gotten into corners. Here is third to make this 4th and 5th
positions, exactly. Ted Musgrave, who challenged early, now is falling back just slightly as Jay Sauter begins to climb up toward the front in car number 1.
Ted Musgrave, who has not had an opportunity, and another crash, this one involving Pat Bourdeau. Appears to be another, no, it's not a single car crash. There are at least 4 or 5 cars involved in this crash above corner number 3. I see Bruce Lee up against the wall.
John Freeman
is involved.
There we go.
Looks like Tony Roper, and is that Dave Watson perhaps sitting on the left-hand side of your screen, and maybe Joey Knott on the right. So a multi-car crash above corner number 3. Tough break, particularly for Freeman and Joey Knott on the right-hand side of your screen. Freeman probably had his best ASA outing yesterday during some preliminary races, and Joey Knott had just qualified extremely comfortably inside the top 20. Joey Knott was 19th quick in this Raby Ford, Alan Knott Honda Ford, and he was very optimistic about today's race, and all he wanted to do was run all day long. Mike Miller comes into the pits.
Mike Miller, a former American Speed Association veteran, returns to ASA action with the Jim Daly team. And this is a familiar car to those of you who've watched us in the last couple of years. Gary St. Amant drove it to the Players Canadian Championship. And there's Brad Loney. He was involved. Look at that right front wheel sitting practically down on the racetrack. The guy who was so surprising so many times in 1992 in the Pops Right Popcorn Chevrolet with major problems. And Pat Bourdeau, the first guy we saw involved, is able to drive his machine away from the incident.
Now, there's a lot of smoke coming from underneath Steve Carlson's car, so perhaps it's either a power steering hose that's gone or maybe he's oiling. With all those cars spinning behind him, that leads you to believe he may have been laying down some moisture liquid on the track.
Jeff Neal goes right below Pat Bourdeau, and that movie continues around the racetrack. They tell us that power steering fluid is in fact slipperier than oil, and that sort of a white smoke is more indicative of power steering fluid than the more blue smoke that we would expect to see if it was oil.
So a rocky start. I mean, we're actually past the start of this race. We're 39 laps in. We mentioned a couple of times about how controversial, at least visually, Odessa was. Well, Ralph Shaheen and ASA Today talked with Rex Robbins about that.
The sport of auto racing depends on split-second decisions made by the race car driver. Every one of those moves potentially puts all the other drivers on the track in danger. There is, however, a certain amount of aggressiveness necessary in order for a driver to be successful. The balance of these two factors inevitably leads to controversial situations, just like the one we had at I-70 with Mike Eddy, Jay Sauter, and Johnny Benson Jr. The job of sorting out these incidents falls on the sanctioning body. We talked to Rex Robbins, president and founder of the American Speed Association, about how the ASA dealt with this controversy.
Basically, ASA has a 6-member owner and driver committee, an executive committee, if you will. And any new rule or any change that we may make during the course of the season, that rule is put before that committee. The committee votes on it, and that becomes the law for that year. In the case at Kansas City, we came back, put a rule together where that any car that was involved in an accident where he spun the car out, that car would immediately go to the tail. In all cases, believe it or not, the rule was voted down. Some comments were, this is not kindergarten racing, it's not for everybody. Secondly, we have good enough drivers now that a guy could spin himself out and cause the guy to look like he spun him out and go to the tail, getting an advantage over that car. So what they've elected to do is to give it back to ASA. If it's a blatant accident between two cars, we'll black flag that car, send him to the tail, and that's where he'll restart the race from. But it will only involve the two cars, not where there's 3 or more cars involved or where you can't make an honest-to-goodness call on it. It'll be between 2 cars, and a black flag comes down on a car that spins the other car out. It's that simple.
With the appropriate guidance of the sanctioning body, auto racing can be both safe for the drivers and exciting for the race fans.
Now, Rob, I know a lot of people think, oh, that's the corporate line, that's the political stance, but I was quite surprised at the overall reaction within the competitors themselves to what happened at Odessa.
I was too. In fact, before it was even put to the committee, it was put to a general vote of all of the drivers, and all of the veterans voted against a major rule change, but simply said to ASA, look, we're here because of what you've done over these 25 plus years. We trust your judgment. Make the call. Yeah, and Mike visually looked guilty, I think, to the majority of people. That's what you saw splashed all over the pages of Speed Sport News. But interestingly enough, and this is not a homer job, it's not the corporate stance, the competitors themselves did not reflect that same kind of stance. Okay, let's go down to the pit area. No, check that. We're going to wait till perhaps our next break, although the pace cars remain out of track. Let me check with Ralph. Ralph, are you ready to do the Brad Loney interview down there?
We sure are, Larry.
Okay.
Brad, quickly, what happened down in turn 3?
The Pops Right Popcorn Metro Metal Chevrolet was running great for us today. All the guys worked really hard. We came into 3, and Joey Knott was underneath the 41 car with left side tires on the grass. They got sideways, and I was looking for the inside line and got caught up in the melee and ended up in the wall.
We're seeing a lot of incidents out there today. Is everybody driving a little extra aggressive this afternoon?
Actually, this whole weekend it seemed like it's a little bit more aggressive than others, and this track takes a toll on us. So hopefully everything will be up. Mom, I'm all right. Happy Mother's Day, and see you at home.
I guess Mike Miller now, gentlemen, car number 18 has lost a wheel. He is down here in pit lane just to our right, and we'll try and get a shot over here as Mike Miller's crew has the Gilland entry up on the jack. Our cameraman Corky Cochran running over there to get the shots for you. There you see the crew working on the backside of Mike's car. It looks like it's the right rear tire that is off the car.
All right, Ralph, thank you very much. Going back to green, remember Joe Shear. It seems like about 3 years ago, we commented that Joe Shear had taken the lead of this race, but it's Shear running in second. And now Bruce Lee is showing a lot of smoke and apparently some damage. He's met with somebody on the inside. Shear's leading, Benson second. Glenn Allen Jr. is third, but Bruce Lee is somewhere out here on this racetrack with a lot of damage on the track.
You can see him crawling around in turn 4. The leaders will flash past him momentarily. There's Bruce Lee. The left front corner is sitting down on the racetrack. He was involved in that altercation just a couple of moments ago. It appears to me that something has broken in the suspension that he wasn't aware of, and on the restart, it simply let go.
Boy, the leaders did an excellent job that time. First of all, Steve Carlson was running amidst the leaders, emitting a lot of smoke. The black flag was waving to Carlson. The leaders figured out who it was. They had just gone around Bruce Lee. You saw them slow down momentarily. The leaders in unison anticipated a yellow flag. They all four looked up to the starter, saw the green flag was still out. He didn't have the green flag in hand because he had the yellow furled in one, the black flag in the other, but they handled it just beautifully.
That's a tough job for that guy in that flag stand. He comes under criticism if he doesn't do his job well, and if he does, nobody ever even notices he's there. It's just a teenager for the ASA, Roger Slack, but with a lot of years of experience in flagging auto races.
Well, Roger did a good job that time because he made the decision. He knew that he had to have both colors in the hand, black and yellow, but he left the green light on and shook his head to the drivers, and the race continues. We've had enough yellow so far.
The battle shaping up now is for 5th position. There goes the leader, Joe Shear, Johnny Benson, Glenn Allen Jr., and 4th is Ted Musgrave, and there's that battle for 5th. Quietly, Bob Seneker has crept into the fray. Seneker started 1993 with his own race cars, the Yellow Waves once again. Started back in 15th position, has now worked his way up to 6th.
This one is in corner number 4 again. We have a car against the outside wall. Looks like Larry Moore colors, but no, it's Larry Moore colors, but it happens to be Terry Wente. You can see that that black smudge mark is likely where he went in. The left rear is cantered, not on the angle that it was built up in Port City. And Terry Wente is our next victim. This has been an absolute heavyweight knockdown, drag-out fight.
Speaking of heavyweight, he looks more like a middle linebacker than he does a race driver. He's got no neck, just a spark plug of a guy, and nobody works harder at the racetrack. He just goes 100 miles an hour. He had a good run last week at Columbus, Ohio, but it's not going to be his afternoon at Milwaukee. This place is treacherous.
And the Clark Oil Company and John Miller, their PR man, they've been very loyal to this team. They've been involved with Terry Wente for, seems like, about the last decade. Ralph, standing by down in the pits, there's been a lot of activity, a lot of cars just stumbling in down there.
Well, unfortunately, Larry, we're getting a lot of cars back behind the wall here, which is keeping us running up and down pit lane, but we did want to update you on some of the leaders and how their cars are performing. Most of the guys are running a little bit tight, including guys like Jay Sauter, Glenn Allen Jr., people of that nature. Some of the other guys are running loose, and the one driver that we found who was running loose was Johnny Benson Jr. And interestingly enough, the guy who is leading is the only driver who said his car is running perfectly. We should also mention that Mike Eddy's car is running a little bit tight. Most of the drivers are complaining to their crews they can't get enough green flag laps. A lot of the drivers set their cars up to come in as we get further into the race to try and develop the car into a good race car as we get near the finish. With these yellow flag conditions, that really throws off the handling, and it takes the car a while to get back into where the driver likes it.
All right, Ralph, Rob brings up the question. We're 48 laps into a 150-lap race. It works out that way. You see, we're on a mile racetrack. We're going 150 miles, so it's 150 laps. What do you think? Is this going to be a one pit stop race or not?
Certainly. You wanted an answer? You got it.
Absolutely. Racing Electronics, by the way, is the official supplier of communications equipment for the American Speed Association. It's giving you an opportunity to feel like you're part of the team. Rob and I now are going to be drawing the name of one lucky race fan during each of the remaining ASA races, televised live on TNN. The winner will receive a Union Bearcat scanner from Racing Electronics, along with a 1-year Racers Frequency membership. So to enter, you send your name and address. You saw the graphic a little earlier on a postcard. I'll repeat it for you again. To Racing Electronics, Box GFS. That's Racing Electronics, Box GFS, 8701 Mallard Creek Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. And the zip code down there is 28262. And incidentally, we do have a winner today. So if you have sent in an entry, listen up. And particularly if you're from Darlington, Pennsylvania, I bet you I got you. Darlington, Pennsylvania, Peggy Rusnak. Congratulations, Peggy. Your Racing Electronics scanner and that frequency membership is on its way.
I'm surprised, Larry, at the attrition already today. And I know you race fans that are sitting at home. And by the way, thanks to all you moms for giving the race fans in the family control of the remote today so that they can tune us in on TNN. You're not going to believe this, but we ran last weekend on a third of a mile, best described as a cereal bowl at Columbus, Ohio, with no on-track incidents, and 25 of the 26 starters finished. Believe it or not, it's the truth. 10 cars behind the wall already to chronicle, as we have throughout the early going of this event. Bob Seneker started in 15th position, now running in the 6th spot. We mentioned that just before going to caution. Mike Eddy was prophetic. He said there would be yellows. There have been. He started 33rd, and despite the fact that he says his car's a little tight, he's moved into the 11th running position.
A total of 5 cautions for 30 laps at lap number 51. So how about that? I mean, we have really been under the restraints here at the Milwaukee Mile. It brings an interesting question up, just how far will these teams go as we take a look at the crowd in our fan cam. The people sitting here in the grandstands at the venerable, I think we called it earlier, Milwaukee Mile, the Milwaukee Fairgrounds Speedway in West Allis, lap 52. Beginning to bring up the question about pit stops. With all these yellow flags, how far can teams go? Everybody's got to stop at least once, and they better hope there's a yellow flag no later than lap 100 and probably less to allow them to get in.
Theoretically, the cars under racing conditions, Larry, can go about 100 miles on fuel. Remember, in ASA competition, you can only take on 2 tires on any caution stop, but Milwaukee has never been especially hard on Goodyear Racing Eagles for these drivers. They seem to be moving a long way on it.
Fan cam, corner number 1.
And those fans in corner number 1 have certainly got an eyeful this afternoon, particularly with the Ray Skillman incident.
They've seen all sides of the American Speed Association stock car. Top, front, side, and the bottom. Joe Shear leads. Johnny Benson Jr. refusing to let Mr. Shear get away, and Glenn Allen Jr. is still lurking there in the shadows.
Remember earlier, Joe Shear saw the black flag under caution. One of the other competitors felt that he might have some oil coming out. Usually the best place to look is on the back bumper. Check out that tail panel. You can see some yellow tape there. No signs of black whatsoever. But, you know, that may be something that if, in fact, there is suspicion of that, Joe Shear will be thinking about that for the next 100 miles.
Well, one of the people who has to make that decision about fuel in this race is Chris Bradley. He is the crew chief of Johnny Benson Jr. And by and large, over the past, 10, 12 ASA races, they've been making a lot of right decisions. Ralph, what's the hot setup in his mind today?
Let's find out. Chris, how far can you go on fuel today with all these yellows?
I wouldn't want to go any further in lap 100. I think lap 100 can be pushing it pretty tight there.
If you get a yellow soon, will you go then, or will you wait till you get close to 100?
We'll probably pit a little sooner than that. The car's a little loose, so hopefully we can tighten up the Ford City Racing Delco Freedom Battery car and get them up in front.
I would think, Ralph and Rob, that the window just opened up, that window for that one and only pit stop. We have passed lap 50, so the cars have about 100 miles to go. Theoretically, they should be able to stop now and go the distance. Next yellow.
That car number 21 badly needs a pit stop. I've watched him the last 3 times down into turn number 1, and he's gone virtually sideways through that corner. Look at Joe Shear stretch out his advantage, and Glenn Allen Jr., whose machine is working better than Benson's, has been there to pressure and to challenge. We also can see there at the top of the screen, there's a good battle for 4th position between Jay Sauter and the number 99 machine of Ted Musgrave.
John Benson Jr. in the Delco Freedom Batteries car is having a very typical good race, and another guy having a typically strong race is that black number 88, Mike Eddy, I think his name is. That's 8th place for car number 88, and Randy McDonald hanging in there.
Mike is trying to get 8th position. Right now he's sandwiched between 2 rookies, Randy McDonald, who finished 6th at Columbus last weekend, and Rick Beebe, who has run strong all year and is the one that most folks feel will be the one to challenge for rookie this season.
There is Mike Eddy moving to the inside of Randy McDonald, the Canadian driver. As we peer out and look at the field, here is Todd Forbes. He's in a battle with Mike Eddy right now. Eddy backing off just a tad. Joe Shear continues to lead. Benson runs in 2nd. In 3rd, and a challenging 3rd at that, is the Carbon Metallic sponsored car. By the way, that's a brake system we'll talk about in a little second, of Glenn Allen Jr. Jay Sauter is 4th. Bob Seneker is in 5th position. 6th is Todd Forbes. Mike Eddy has moved up to 7th. Make that 6th is Todd Forbes. 7th is Teddy Musgrave. 8th is Mike Eddy. In 9th position is Rick Beebe. And 10th is Randy McDonald.
Things seem to have settled down for the moment between Johnny Benson and Glenn Allen Jr. Benson slides to the high side of the racetrack. Glenn looking for that scantest of spaces that would enable him to push that forward into that second position. And this time into turn number 1, I think he's got it.
Well, Glenn appears to be handling better than Benson. Benson showing a little more steam, I would suggest, although normally handling will win out over that under most situations. And in that particular one, once that Glenn breaks free from Benson, he opens up a little bit of daylight.
Well, let's see if he's able to narrow the margin between himself and Joe Shear, who's built now about a 3 or 4 second advantage. He's not even in the frame at this point. You can see the blue car there. That's the number 84, Bob Seneca, and he's moved to 4th position.
But look how quickly Allen has opened up the differential between himself and the third running now, Johnny Benson Jr.
Well, and that for Benson, I think, has been coming for several laps. There you can see the gap, first to second. Allen will try to chase down the leading Joe Shear, who's all by himself.
Other cars in the top 20 include Gary St. Amant in the Wind Spirit Ford. Gary, who had a second place at Columbus, Ohio a week ago, running strong here this weekend. Unofficially right now in 12th. In 13th position is Harold Baer, the veteran driving with a cast. Dennis Lampman, 14th. 15th is Ken Schrader. 16th is Dave Watson again, all unofficial. 17th, Jeff Neal, followed by Tony Raines, Tom Harrington, and Roger Avance, I believe, is up there pretty strong at this point.
And Johnny Benson about to lose 3rd position to Bob Seneca. Seneca moves right in behind him to challenge. And in another lap or two, you may see him use that same low groove that Glenn Allen Jr. used to take over the second spot just a moment ago. Benson trying to hold the car down. He just simply can't get it done. And Seneca, surprisingly, Larry, looked to the high side of him that time. Maybe that was just a little bit of a psychological ploy to get Benson to give him room, and now Bob will take the low side.
What happens here at Milwaukee is that the track is so flat and the speed so relatively high for a so-called short track, although this qualifies under the international classification of a super speedway. That the speeds are so high and the track is so flat that if your setup is off just a little bit, you simply cannot hold the car down on the bottom of the racetrack. We mentioned earlier, there is literally no banking to catch you at these speeds. Even high bank tracks will flatten out at speeds of 150 miles an hour. You're close to that most of the time here at Milwaukee. And if that car's not hooked up just right, you're defenseless to the people behind you.
In some lap traffic, Todd Forbes in the Yoder Ford Knights Inn Thunderbird has caught Jay Sauter and now challenges him for 6th position, or rather 5th spot. You can see right behind them is Mike Eddy in his GM Goodwrench Pontiac as they put some laps on the number 44 machine of Pat Bourdeau.
Bourdeau is one of many drivers that was involved. You can see the damage to the front end and a crash here in the early laps of the Milwaukee Mile. We've had quite a number of yellow flags so far today, and a lot of cars have ended up against the wall. And it's really been a slugfest. We've had...
Here comes Mike Eddy. He's going to take 6th position away from Todd Forbes. Forbes gives him racing room on the high side of the racetrack.
Unofficially, 5 yellow flags, and every one of them has been for a serious incident. Repeating once again, no driver injuries. Nobody was even close. The one car did get upside down today. That was Ray Skillman. 2nd time in a row on TV. He's had a visually spectacular accident, but he was moving around and scrambling to get out of that car even before it stopped.
Mike Eddy now patiently works his way past the Valvoline Racing for Kids machine of Dr. Yale Conley, and he'll now set sail for Jay Sauter. Gee, it seems not too long ago we saw these two drivers running in exactly those configuration, though battling for the top spot instead of 4th position.
Mike Eddy really showing some restraint today. He knew that there would be a number of yellow flags. He knew that with the experience of himself and the crew. And here is Bob Seneca moving to the inside of Glenn Allen Jr.
Seneca taking the 2nd position away from Glenn Allen Jr. and very quickly begins to pull away from the youngster from formerly Cincinnati, Ohio, now Michigan, where he works with his racing team on a daily basis. Seneca with a car that he built himself from the ground up. It was an experimental machine. He didn't know whether or not it would work when he came into 1993. It's working quite well, thank you. Finished 3rd last weekend at Columbus in the Buckeye 300.
Gordon Ford there on your screen, the blue bird of Bob Seneker, the blue Thunderbird of Bob Seneker, and the red and white. Number 15, Wisconsin proud today, Coca-Cola Classic car of Glenn Allen Jr. We mentioned a little earlier about carbon metallic, which is sprouted on the car, the number 15 of Glenn Allen Leroy Troops. It's a brake technology that is actually being used in Indy cars and the other divisions of stock car racing, and it came from Formula One. So carbon metallic taking a serious look at the American Speed Association, recognizing, you know, the potential promotional value of this series. Well, things have calmed down finally. Let's take a break. Back at the Badgerland 150, this is the Great American Racing Series, the American Speed Association. There are more awards for drivers this year than ever before, including a $30,000 prize for Rookie of the Year honors. And also, one of the very significant sponsors of the American Speed Association is the Win Oil Company, and their regular television feature of the Halfway Challenge winner is coming up in about 3 miles. And right now, looks like they better write that check and address it to Wisconsin, because I think that Joe Shear is going to be the man who picks this up. Let's go down to Ralph.
You know, Larry, we were talking earlier about gas mileage. It could be tire wear that's going to be the difference here. We talked to the top teams. Everybody's going to change 4 tires except for the number 36 car of Joe Shear. Right now, they're talking about only changing 2. The final decision there will be Joe Shear's, and if he does only change 2, of course, it'll be the right size.
And you know, Ralph just mentioned something that contradicts what I said earlier, and he's exactly right. Only on the Milwaukee Mile can you change 4 tires under a caution stop. And look at Joe Shear. He really slid high down in turn number 1. He needs a stop, as well as do all of the other competitors who are chasing him.
Should be a money lap for the Lake Villa, Illinois driver in the Pathfinder Lumina, left-hander Lumina. Sorry, now we have a pass for 3rd as John Benson Jr. is coming back to Glenn Allen. Back up and following Joe Shear around, though. Looking for Shear. He comes past the front straightaway, and as we watch this battle for 3rd place, Joe Shear has become the winner of this week's Wins Halfway Challenge. Here, however, is Benson. Benson and Allen, the 2 juniors, have been shadowing each other all race long. But as we mentioned, the winner of $500 from Wins Oil for leading at the halfway point today is Joe Shear. $500 for number 36.
They call him Little Joe. In his ASA racing career, he's taken 4 checkered flags. None of them have ever been on the Milwaukee Mile. And it's been a long time coming for Joe. He's still got a long way to go. Nearly half of this race, he just has 1 lap more than 50% of the distance concluded.
And let's repeat one more time for those of you at home and like to play crew chief. We are well inside it's now a door, not an open window for pit stops. If we get a yellow flag anytime in the next 25 laps, you're going to see everybody coming into pit. The big and intriguing question is, what if there is no yellow flag until lap 100? When do the leaders pit under green, and how many? The mid-race recap here at the Badgerland 150. The race leader was Joe Shear. We'd had 3 lead changes among 3 drivers: John Benson Jr., Glenn Allen Jr., and this man, Little, Joe Shear, who sits tall in the saddle, had been the 3 race leaders. And we'd had 5 cautions for 30 laps, and those took place inside the first 45 laps.
Meanwhile, the guy that may have overworked his tires more than anyone as we continue to watch Joe Shear is Mike Eddy in car number 88, who's no longer coming forward. In fact, his challenge of Jay Sauter is gone. He's even lost a spot to Todd Forbes. Joe Shear, however, having things all his own way here this afternoon in car number 36, coming from the 11th starting position if you just joined us, after qualifying fastest yesterday, but doing it in 2nd round qualifying attempt.
It's been pretty smooth sailing for about the last 30 laps now, from lap 50 to lap 80, which is what Shear is on right now. He'll put lap number 80 into the books as he blazes the trail this time. Here's the interval between 1st and 2nd, and Bob Seneker, I would suggest, is moving in. Right now he's 1.4 seconds behind, and that's the closest I've seen anybody in quite some time.
About 5 laps ago, he was over 4 seconds behind, so he's definitely narrowing the gap and living up to his reputation of being patient and the sneaker. Just coming in there, kind of unheralded, unexpected toward the front. And Glenn Allen Jr. has brought car number 15 on pit road. there he is. There's obviously something amiss in car number 15 as John Freeman has hit the wall. In car number 16, the Tioga Pine Chevrolet up in turn number 4. And I say hit the wall. I think those tire marks may have been from a previous incident, and Glenn Allen has come behind the wall.
Yeah, you're looking at Glenn Allen. We got a report that there is oil on the trap. This is a brand new engine this morning. The engine they qualified with was in trouble. You see a lot of smoke coming out from underneath the Performance Friction Wisconsin Proud Coca-Cola Classic decorated hood. And Glenn Allen Jr. appears to be done for the day, and that is unfortunate because that was their best effort of this year so far.
It certainly was, and the folks from Golden Engines have worked very, very hard trying to get this V6 Ford program up to speed.
This is the yellow flag that all the leaders were waiting for, and unfortunately one of the leaders caused it, we think. Glenn Allen Jr. Spitting out a lot of oil around 3 and 4. Here comes Joe Shear, the race leader in the Nielsen Chevrolet. He's coming pitward right now. The crew will be bolting the wall, and our Ralph Sheheen will be there to call it.
Larry, the big question here with Joe Shear is going to be, does he go for 4 tires or just 2? They're working on the right side tires right now. The car is up in the air. We see also John Benson's crew working on right side tires for him. This is the break that Mike Eddy needed. His car had used up the tires the crew said. He was all out of tires and was just hanging on. Now Joe Shear's crew comes around to the left side. It will be a 4-tire stop now for Joe Shear's car. Benson's crew puts on 4 tires. Mike Eddy's crew putting on 4 tires. It will be a 4-tire stop for all the top runners. Randy McDonald's crew, he's coming out already. He's got his service done. The left side's now going on Shear's car. He will drop down, and Johnny Benson beats him out of the pits. So although Shear was very fast on the track, a very slow stop here in the pits as they had trouble with the left front tire. Getting that on is really, really hurting this team.
And Bob Seneker pushed a tire out into the pit road. You can see it sitting there. Everybody was able to safely get by. Joe Shear has a very difficult trying stop in car number 36, maybe partly attributable to the fact that these guys don't do this all the time. You can see there's been some damage to the front end, to that little bill underneath Bob Seneker's nose there on the Thunderbird, car number 84. That may necessitate another stop.
Here's what happened. You see there's a tire left by Kenny Schrader's crew right in front of Seneker, and Seneker blasted it as he exited the pit. So the 2 drivers who had dominated the last 25 green flag laps, Joe Shear and Bob Seneker, have not disastrous, but very poor pit stops. Who knows if they will have enough moxie to come back up through this field, but the forest is growing very tall for them to work their way through. Goal line today, 150 laps, 150 miles, the Badgerland 150. At this point, we're just past the midfield stripe at lap number 84. And unofficially, the running order right now, Kent Stauffer turning in a great pit stop as we're getting ready to go back to green. He's the race leader. Sauter is second. Harold Fair is third. Mike Eddy fourth. Johnny Benson Jr. fifth. And you had some details on Sauter. We're
going to answer very shortly the question about 2 tires versus 4. Jay Sauter had a fantastic pit stop. Of all the leaders of those cars running in the top 5 or 6, Jay was the only one to take on only 2 tires in that KC Motorsports Delco Voyager Chevrolet. Does he have enough on the right side to go the distance and carry those left sides as he very quickly dispatches with the previous leader, Kent Stauffer?
Okay, Ralph is standing by with a little more information on his pit stop. And Ralph, before we go to you, let me finish the top 10 rundown. Unofficially, 6th, Tony Raines. 7th is Randy McDonald. 8th is Steve Holtzhausen. 9th is Dave Walton. And 10th is now Tom Jones. Ralph?
Well, Larry, here's the problem for Joe Shear. When he pitted, there's a stud that these locks lock onto. When they pushed the tire onto the hub, it pushed the stud all the way through the hub. Now, the problem is they got the tire on. Only 4 of these lugs are actually locked on. The big concern is, did that stud go all the way through, and is it rubbing up against the brake caliper as the wheel turns? If it does, he could break the brake caliper off, and Joe Shear could have a wild ride.
One of Eddie Kluka's Bassett wheels. Eddie is another one of the mainstays as far as the support crew. A lot of races around the country. Rick Beebe, whom you're looking at, you saw a very quick shot of him, looped around inside of corner number 1 just after we went green. I was unable to determine whether or not he stayed on the lead lap, but I think that he did. I had given you a top 10 rundown I'll come back to that in a second. We're going to go back and look at what happened to Rick Beebe. Rob?
You can see Rick trying to make a pass of Dennis Lampman, gets into the side of car number 9, slides down to the bottom, now back up into the racing groove. Look at the moves being made by Roger A. Vance and Todd Forbes to avoid the spinning number 19 of Rick Beebe.
And Joe Shear was
Joe
the first
was right
black
there,
car that went
exactly.
by. All right, told you about the top 10 as we're looking at Beebe moving up to the front line. Todd Forbes has a fire, a serious fire underneath the Thunderbird hood of the Knights in Noah Yoder Ford, and fire is raging pretty strongly underneath there.
What a shame. Todd had an outstanding run going. A lot of folks never really believed 2 or 3 years ago when he came to ASA that he was going to be a contender. He dispelled all doubts with 2 second-place finishes in 1992, including an unbelievable battle at the checker with Bob Seneca at Toledo late in the year.
Yeah, those were his best career finishes. You take a look inside the business department of that Ford Thunderbird. Forbes, as you mentioned, Rob, has really shown some strength in this series. Last season, among all people who led laps, he was ranked 8th. So he was very much among the season leaders in that category, and gives you an idea of the speed. He's had 2 pole positions, and he qualified in 8th for this race. Now, again, we're going to go to commercial here for just a second, but trying to run down this unofficial listing of drivers after the last round of pit stops. 11th was Tom Harrington. Gary St. Amant in the Wind Spirit Thunderbird was 12th. Kenny Schrader in the AC Delco number 52 was 13th. Bob Seneca 14th. Jeff Neal 15th. Beebe was 16th. Dennis Lampman was 17th. And Joe Shear was 18th. We'll be back. We're back at green in the American Speed Association Great American Racing Series feature event in Milwaukee, and we have a brand new race up front. We've had a series of pit stops, a couple of recent yellow flags, and that is the war for the first place. A man who fought with that driver right there in the red and white 21 for his entire race is unfortunately on the sidelines right now. He's with Ralph.
And did you have any idea your car was going to let go on you?
No, we picked up a bad vibration. This Coca-Cola Performance Friction Ford Thunderbird really ran well. It's just our luck. I don't know. We keep trying. We had a really good race car capable of winning today, so we just had to come back and get them next week in Nashville.
Meanwhile, Johnny Benson has taken 4th position away from Mike Eddy and now chases the disabled driver of car number 81, Harold Fair, in the Handiwack Chevrolet. Just to remind you, Harold racing with a cast from the elbow down on his right arm, and Benson has that car working just like it did at the start of the race. Surprisingly, Kent Stauffer is able to stay with Jay Sauter. Both of those 2 drivers only took on 2 tires.
I'll tell you somebody else who is really moving right now is Gary St. Amant. He's just outside of the picture. He's just to the right of that group of cars streaming down the back straightaway. There's Gary, the bright orange nose in the Wind Spirit Ford Thunderbird. St. Amant is currently in, what we got him here, 5, 6, 7th position, car 7 in 7th. But boy, it's getting real interesting up front, isn't it?
It certainly is. Jay Sauter leads. Benson now trying to wrestle 2nd position away from Kent Stauffer as Mike Eddy has taken 4th away from Harold Fair.
What do you think about this Randy McDonald guy? On the screen there's Stauffer, Eddy, and then there is, who's the next black car? Right behind him there.
That's Harold Fair.
Harold Fair. And right behind Harold is Randy McDonald. 2nd week in a row, this rookie, unknown to a lot of people in the Midwest at least, having another terrific race.
But he's not unknown to race fans in southeastern Canada and the northeastern United States, a former GM Player Series champion, and we've got a battle up front for the lead. And you know what? Only one car, that machine of Kent Stauffer, is separating the marquee players through 1993 in the first 2 races. Sauter leads, Benson 2nd, and Mike Eddy in car number 88 trying to take away that 3rd position.
Side by side for first place. Mr. Benson just kind of slides underneath the covers and takes over the number 1 position from car number 1. So a couple of battery sponsors knocking it out head to head. There's Joe Shear right in the center of your screen. Joe Shear unofficially about 13th or 14th position right now, working to the inside of Dennis Lampman. There's Kenny Schrader, and Shear trying to move up in front, but he doesn't appear to have that overpowering strength, Rob, that he had early on.
I wonder if the crew members have radioed to him that he may have a problem with the studs on the wheel of that race car. He's just got to block that out of his mind and drive it as hard as he can.
There's Lampman going to the inside of Ken Schrader, and pretty much an indication. And Lampman and Schrader both slide very high, giving Scheer a free pass. He was invited through that door, wasn't he?
Rick Beebe closing as well in car number 19. He spun, bringing out the last caution, but remains, we believe, on the lead lap. Another rookie driver, as is Randy McDonald.
There's Tom Jones in the blue and white number 0 at the bright pink numeral. He was unofficially in 10th place right after that round of pit stops. Jones and Schrader, you see them in the light-painted race cars. There are 4 cars in the American Speed Association that are painted essentially like that. And unless you're really close to the series, it's hard to keep them apart. If you're a fan of Pat Bourdeau, you've seen that his car looks very similar to the paint job on Kenny Schrader's car, as well as Tom Jones.
Dennis Lampman, the gentle giant, running in 14th position, a career best finish last year at Calgary. He finished 3rd in the 500.
In point of fact, last season, several drivers turned in their career's best. No less than 9 drivers, as we see Beebe going underneath Schrader now.
Look at the fire coming from Tom Jones's car. It appears that he may have the fuel mixture just a bit rich in car number 0, but he's working his way back through the field as well. Sorry, Larry.
No less than 9 drivers, no problem, turned in their career best a year ago, and that's not even counting the rookies. Benson, Rain, Sauter, Forbes, Jones, Stauffer, Harrington, Lampman, Vogel, and Bourdeau all had their best career finishes last season. Probably a mark that will never be duplicated again. To have 9 drivers in one season have their best finishes ever.
The last time by, the leader, Johnny Benson, completed lap number 100 as the battle continues for 13th position between, or rather 14th spot. It's Rick Beebe. Ken Schrader in car number 52 had a great run at I-70 earlier, not working quite as well here this weekend, has not shown much strength. And also in that fracas is the 0 of Tom Jones. He's right behind, and Ted Musgrave, who we have heard very little from since the early going.
Musgrave looked very strong in the early stages of this race, and a lot of people, including the guy standing next to me right now, thought that he might have been one of the favorites to win today. But as the yellow flag, what else, waves again, we haven't heard much from Teddy, although he doesn't seem, Musgrave that is, to have had any problems. He just sort of got out of sync.
I think that was the situation. And again, lack of running a regular schedule with the ASA can really cost you come pit stop time. It's Dr. Yale Conley spinning in the Valvoline Racing for Kids Chevrolet, car number 3. And this guy's quite a story, Larry. I mean, he missed last weekend's race at Columbus because he was taking his surgery boards out in California.
Dr. Yale Conley, he is for real a physician. Yale Conley spinning, making no contact. The yellow flag comes out for the 8th time this afternoon. Wow, this has been torture. Let's take another break. Here is what happened a week ago at Columbus Motor Speedway. You see Johnny Benson Jr. firing off in the pole on this very circular 1/3 mile racetrack. Gary St. Amant in the Wind Spirit Thunderbird dominated most of this race. He led the vast majority in the early stages, but John Benson Jr. just 5 laps from the finish got around him.
Actually, Benson led about the first 140 laps. Then Gary St. Amant took over when Benson made a stop. I did that one for radio, Larry, and I had a hard time maintaining my professionalism. The last 40 laps as Benson came from the rear to win that race with just 5 laps to go was nothing short of a phenomenal performance.
I remember what Gary told me. He feinted to Benson that he was going to pit, and he chose not to. He stayed out with old tires, and as you say, it didn't work. The Great American Dream Cruise, by the way, is part of the Great American Racing Series. The AC Delco Challenge Series presents that Great American Dream Cruise with guest hosts Mike Ennie, Ken Schrader, and Rick Mears. What are they using old retired drivers for? Rick Mears. For as little as $579, you can take a 4-day, 3-night cruise aboard the new Carnival Superliner Fantasy, beginning December 9th. Included is round-trip airfare from anywhere in the continental United States.
I didn't see my name or yours on that list of hosts. Race fans, why don't you call in or write in? Say you want to see Rob and Larry and Ralph there, too.
I don't think that our chances are very good of that happening.
Okay,
by the way,
send money then, so we can go.
That includes ground transfer, celebrity cocktail party, and onboard food and entertainment. Let me give you that number one more time. 1-800-849-1942. Now, we're going to go back to green here momentarily with 104 laps down. John Benson continues to lead. Jeez. Jay Sauter is second. Mike Eddy is third. Things are back to normal. Boy, if you watch the telecast at Odessa, look at this. could you have scripted this one any more dramatically than this? Now, Ralph has been standing by, keeping up with what's been going on down the pits, and Ralph, a lot more has been happening in the pits than on the racetrack, although that might change now.
Well, the one guy who had an interesting ride today, a very scary ride, was Todd Forbes. Todd, how did you get that car to stop, and did you know it was going to catch on fire?
Well, I didn't know it was going to catch on fire until I saw the smoke, but the motor quit, and when I saw the smoke start rolling, I just looked for the fire trucks and got out.
One of the smartest drivers in the racetrack today, steering straight for the fire marshals.
Red-orange flames make even the least educated a bright band.
Yeah, certainly.
Todd is a veteran race driver, though we've mentioned it many times. Vast experience. He made the shift over from open wheelers to the ASA stock cars, and he and Noah Yoder out of Hicksville, Ohio, one of my favorite places. I went to races there in the early 1950s at the Hicksville Fairgrounds. Have been a great entry for ASA racing.
There's a guy that wants to give himself the best 50th birthday present you can imagine, a win on the Milwaukee Mile. Joe Shear has just taken 6th position away from Gary St. Amant, and now he begins to go to work on Bob Seneker. You can see whatever it is that Seneker damaged continues to flap underneath the front nose of that car number 84. It may have caused more damage than Bob or the crew would like to admit. He was so strong just prior to that pit stop.
This could be very interesting because Seneker is still in it. Obviously, Shear is still in it. Benson and Sauter and Eddie don't appear to be disappearing into sunset. This could be quite a shootout right to the very end. 109 laps, working on 110, meaning we have 40 laps or 40 miles to go.
Real quick, while things are settled down, I want to say hi to one more person, to the mom of Rudy Guest, Ruth. Rudy works on Joe Knott's crew. We understand that she's recuperating at home, and we say hi to you, Ruth. I think we've gotten all those hellos in that we promised
Well,
today.
not exactly. To the best of my knowledge, my mom and dad aren't recuperating at all, nor my wife. I'm going to say hi to all of them.
Me too. No, mine, not yours.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Anyway, back to the racing action. In today's race, we had 10 Ford automobiles that qualified for it, led off by Glenn Allen and Kent Stauffer. 26 cars were Chevrolets. There were 6 Oldsmobiles and 2 Pontiacs. And don't forget that Chevrolet and Ford have put up over $1.5 million for drivers who win or place in the top 5 in Fords and Chevrolets this year.
Benson picked up an $8,000 bonus at Columbus just for being behind the wheel of a Chevrolet. If you win in a Ford today, $8,000. If you win in a Chevy, $4,000. If it's not won this weekend, it will roll over to next weekend, where we'll be live again on TN at Nashville Motor Raceway.
Well, ASA teams and drivers will prove themselves again this year on tracks ranging from the quarter mile at Anderson to right here, the Milwaukee Mile, and even onto the road course. Hey, if you were here, here's one of the scenes that you might see, depending upon what ticket you bought.
And you'd be watching Gary St. Amant in that black and orange car trying to pass Bob Seneker for the 6th position. Not able to get it done there as they closed in behind rookie driver, car number 70, Randy McDonald.
Randy McDonald, we mentioned it several times as you're looking at Bob Seneker and Gary St. Amant, and the Wins Thunderbird there on the screen also. Has been very strong in this Lit-Bit-owned car. He's had a couple of great races, and the impressive thing about it, Rob, is that he did it on the very short confines of the flat 1/3 mile, and now here he is on a super speedway 1 mile racetrack. Randy, with a lot of experience, like so many other drivers who come to ASA, he's run on the high bank tracks in the Southeast, a lot of road course experience also. He could be very strong our road course race too.
And you know, despite the fact that he has strong credentials, it's not easy to come run up in front like this with the American Speed Association. These are the best short track drivers in the nation, in the world. Bob Seneker now easing away slightly from Gary St. Amant. They run in 8th and 9th positions respectively. Car number 70, that is the Randy McDonald machine. He occupies the 7th position and is closing on car number 90, Kent Stauffer.
Gentlemen, I have an update for you on car number 1 of Jay Sauter. The one thing Jay does not want to see anymore this afternoon is a yellow flag. Under yellow flag conditions, the fuel is actually boiling in the car. What that does is it causes like a vapor lock with the fuel, and he has problems getting the fuel to pick up in the motor and the car to launch away under restarts. It gurgles, it pops. That's how Ted Musgrave got past it. As long as it stays green, he's okay. If he sees a yellow, he's in trouble in car number 1.
Well, car number 1 continues to motor in 2nd place, but with a deja vu of Odessa. Mike Eddy trails right behind him. Mike Eddy is running in third, and running out front, there you see the interval between first and second, is John Benson Jr.
Benson running all by himself, creeping into the frame. Car number 36, Joe Shear. He's worked his way back up into that fourth position. And pretty soon, Mike Eddy is not going to have to worry about Jay Sauter as Jay eases away from the Goodwrench, or rather the GM Goodwrench Pontiac, car number 88, and Joe Shear begins to close. Black cars right together, second, third, and fourth on the race course.
In fifth is the veteran Harold Fair. Sixth is Kent Stauffer, having a terrific race in that Flex-Tex Kinetic Engines number 90. It's a Ford. Remember, he qualified so well again. In seventh is Randy McDonald. Eighth is Bob Seneca. Ninth, Gary St. Amant. And 10th, Jeff Neal.
We haven't mentioned Jeff too much this weekend, driving the Fanetti-owned Ford Thunderbird. And a pass for third position. Joe Shear almost makes it look easy as he slides to the high side, literally slides past Mike Eddy.
Rob, I think that by and large, even though Benson has a very husky lead right now, I think that Joe Shear has been the dominant car of this race.
He certainly has. Ralph says that Jay Sauter doesn't want a caution. That red and white car number 21 doesn't want one either.
That's for sure. Other cars still in the lead lap, by the way. Mentioned briefly Roger Avance, the Denver, Colorado driver, a few laps ago. We were just trying to visually run down the top 20. We suspected that he was in it. Roger did not have all that great of a starting position for today's race, but apparently we were right. Avance, incidentally, is running in 14th position. Avance, who started, get this, 42nd in the All-City Hardware Floor Company Chevrolet, again, a racing out of Denver, Colorado. He's picked up more positions than any other driver in the field today, from 42nd to 14, almost 30 positions higher than he started.
And he had a tough job getting into the field, did not qualify his way in, had to go into a last chance qualifying race, spun, came back, finished strongly enough to be added to the starting grid today. Shortly, we're going to have a battle for second position. Right now, it's occupied by Jay Sauter in the KC Motorsports Voyager battery car number 1. But Joe Shear in that Stanton left-hander Chevy is right there to challenge.
Boy, Shear is coming on very strong. This racetrack has a tremendous tradition of stock car racing behind it. Drivers like Norm Nelson and Butch Hartman have been the dominant drivers here in the past. Joe Ruttman, Bobby Allison, Rusty Wallace, Dean Roper are among the drivers who have won races here in stock cars. Bobby Unser, A.J. Foyt. The finish of the Governor's Cup back in 1981, some 12 years ago, was kind of interesting. And cars in the field were Dick Trickle and Ken Schrader finishing first and fifth. Here comes Joe Shear.
And they're not that far behind the number 21 machine of Johnny Benson. You can see Mike Eddy's car number 88 fading a little bit. He's having a great run this afternoon from 33rd to 4th, but can't get over the hump. He's radioed his crew chief, Howard Thomas, telling him we're too tight. That means the car simply does not want to turn, and it's hard to do anything with it. There's no way that you can adjust your driving style to get the car to work better when it's pushing on a flat racetrack.
Joe Shear, Johnny Benson Jr., and Jay Sauter all trying to get their names into the record books. Another interesting race here, the Miller 200 back in 1981. Listen to these names: Rusty Wallace first, Joe Ruttman second, Bobby Allison third, Alan Kowicki sixth, Tom Jones 15th. That was a USAC race. Kenny Schrader 18th. So a tremendous stock car heritage tradition here at the Milwaukee Mile, and this one is tightening up. It's Benson first, Shear second, Jay Sauter third. Each of them has shown the ability to lead this race. All eyes are right now on the black number 36 of Joe Shear.
Let's check the gap, first to second. Not much. It's about, well, we're showing 3.3 seconds. I'm not sure that that picked up Benson and Joe Shear. I think that might have been the distance between Johnny Benson and Mike Eddy. As visually, it would appear that that margin may be less than a second for Benson.
123 laps, coming down to the point of 25 laps left. If this were an NBA game, it would be the fourth quarter, and if this were an NHL hockey playoff game, this would be the last quarter before the sudden death playoff. But we only got 25 laps here. Whether or not two drivers or three drivers cross the finish line in a dead heat, this race is going to end in 25 laps.
You know what I love most, I think, about AC Delco Challenge Series racing is that it is not the NBA, it's not the NHL, not to take anything away from them, but right up till the last turn of the last lap, the complete complexion can change of an event, and that very rarely happens in a ballgame. Sure, they go into, you know, overtime periods or sudden death, but if somebody has a big lead, there's no making up for that, and there certainly can be in racing.
Well, our man who was privileged to get the inside information first about everybody out there, from the people who break to the people who crash out to the people who are the threats to win, is Ralph Shaheen. And Ralph, you got some information on Mr. Benson.
Well, the story with Johnny Benson Jr. is that his car is getting loose. The cloud cover is starting to break up a little bit. We've had high clouds all afternoon here. Now with the sun shining bright, it's really accentuating the looseness of Johnny Benson's car. So we'll have to keep our eyes on him as he slips and slides his way around the Milwaukee Mile. To add to that, Joe Shear's car was tight when the cloud cover was over it. Now that the sun has broken through, his car is balancing out, and he's getting a nice neutral handling to his car, so the 36 should be getting even quicker as Benson slows down.
And Ralph, right now, the 36 is about as quick as Johnny Benson would like to see it. It's quicker than Benson would like to have it. Joe Shear has moved up to put a serious threat to that throne position, the first spot here at the Milwaukee Mile that right now Johnny Benson Jr. holds.
Well, if Joe Shear continues to show that mastery of the oval that he's evidenced all day today, and if Ralph gets an opportunity to interview him in victory lane, we're going to get to see just how good an interviewer Ralph Shaheen is, because Joe won't have much to say, I can tell you.
Shear tries the inside, showing how superior that car is. He goes to the high side. This is short track racing at its finest on a super speedway. Look how strong that Shear car is. He is running about 1/8 of a mile longer than what John Benson Jr. is, and he's passing him on the high side.
Benson will not roll over and play dead. He'll defend to the death that spot that he's held for so long here this afternoon, but Joe Shear simply, Larry, will not be denied the top position.
Joe Shear showing the strength of we have not seen in a long time from him, and certainly as strong as we've seen any ASA car on a major speedway. We have a car up against the fence. It appears to be Alec Pinsino in corner number 3. Shear has just taken the lead. I do believe that we did get that race, or that lap rather, completed. Yes, it is Pinsino. Apparently minor contact with the outside wall for this Windsor Canadian driver, Windsor, Ontario Canadian driver. So with just 21 laps from the finish, we're going to take a breath here. Can Joe Shear hold on to the lead, which he just wrestled from John Benson? Waltrip, Martin, the near great, the legendary, the champions. Established almost 30 years ago, the history of contemporary stock car racing is the history of ASA. And here is another ASA memory. In 90 years of racing, the Milwaukee Mile has been the curator to some of the most prized gems of motorsports. Stock cars appeared in the late 40s, starting a new tradition, a tradition that continued with the American Speed Association in May '78, when Bob Seneker paced the field to the checkered in the inaugural running of ASA at the Mile.
Yeah, Milwaukee has a lot of prestige all by itself. It's one of our favorite tracks to come to every year, and we come here twice, and winning here would mean a lot.
ASA's affair with the Milwaukee Mile flourished through the 80s, with Mark Martin winning twice here in the 80s season on his way to his 3rd straight series championship. That feat's never been matched. The late Alan Kowicki, a Wisconsin native, always tough here, won the July '83 race after coming in second to Bob Seneker in May '82. Rusty Wallace sat on the pole in the July '84 race and went on to capture victory at the Mile the following year. The recent high-flying act had been ASA champion in '83. The 1990s promised continuation of the ASA tradition at the Milwaukee Mile. Here's 2-time winner, home stater, Scott Hansen.
You know, I come down here ever since I was a little guy and watched a lot of good racing take place here. And, you know, the biggest deal in my life was to come down here, sit on a pole, and win the race for the first time. So, you know, it's got a lot of good memories to me.
As we go back to green at the legendary Milwaukee Mile, this place has existed since 1876. The track built on George Stevens' horse farm. It's been dirt, it's been crushed gravel with some tar on it, then it was blacktop, and it has been the site of some of the more entertaining races in motor racing history. And right now, Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker and Gary St. Amant are entertaining us.
ASA Racing legends dueling for 4th and 5th positions. It's Bob Seneker taking that spot away from Mike Eddy. None of the leaders, Larry, came on pit road during that caution with just 16 laps, 16 miles to go in this race. 73 wins for Seneker, 7 championships for Mike Eddy, but it doesn't look like either one is going to get it done this afternoon.
No, it doesn't. John Benson Jr. is in a stalking second place. He moves in on Joe Scheer. John Benson Jr. up front is challenging, looks to the inside.
Scheer gets sideways coming off the 4th turn, and Bonsai Benson is at it again.
One of the Michigan monsters that we sort of highlighted near the top of the show, John Benson Jr. challenging the Illinois driver, Joe Scheer. In 3rd is Jay Sauter. 4th is Bob Seneker. 5th is Mike Eddy. 6th is Gary St. Amant. And 7th is Randy McDonald. Those are the really competitive cars for this race, but this is almost a race of
this time goes high. He'll try to make that groove work around Joe Scheer. Look at Scheer slip and slide. Benson is alongside, has the edge, crossing the start-finish line.
And this was the move that Scheer put on John Benson a few laps ago, going to the high side. Scheer looked like he had it all over Benson. Where did this come from?
Amazing. I thought Benson's car was loose. Maybe the lengthy caution allowed those right side tires to cool down, gave him a little bit of impetus as he got enough to hold him off. I'm afraid, Larry, in another 4 or 5 laps, you may see Scheer just move right back past.
It could go away again. Benson may have realized from the cockpit that this was his chance to get back into the front spot. And maybe, just maybe, he can hold off Joe Scheer for the final 13 laps, Ralph.
Larry, he had just radioed into Chris Bradley, his crew chief, and asked if anybody had been running the high groove. He was hoping somebody was blowing the dust off. Chris radioed back and said, nope, it's been dry up there all day. He wasn't going to go for it. It was all up to John. John made the move himself.
John washes out a little bit going through 3 and 4. This could be a side-by-side battle for the final 12 miles here. Here's that view from the top row of the main grandstand again. There is no difference between 1st and 2nd place. Yet another lead change.
Johnny Benson Jr. with 5 career ASA victories. Both have come in the last 2 seasons. Joe Scheer has won 4 times. I've been the announcer for ASA for 8 years. I don't remember a Joe Scheer victory. It's been a long time for little Joe Scheer.
I don't know that Joe Scheer has a career win in the American Speed Association. He backs off going through 3 and 4. Down to 10 laps to go as Joe Scheer, who now we understand does have 4 wins in ASA competition, but it's been a while.
Certainly has. This may be the rejuvenation of the man from Illinois as he is leading this race now with less than 10 miles, 10 laps to go. Might be a good time to remind ASA race fans, if you're relatively new to the Great American Racing Series, there's Larry Moore sliding to a stop on the backstretch in car number 41. Scheer will maintain the lead. That we do run the last 5 laps of every ASA event under green flag conditions. You'll never see an ASA event finishing under caution, and Gary St. Amant has brought car number 7 on pit road in a bit of a surprise. The 6th place car comes on pit road as Joe Scheer will lead. Interesting. Benson went by. I don't know what's going on. Scheer slowed down somewhat dramatically on the backstretch, and we'll have to wait for ASA scoring to sift this thing out, Larry. We don't race back to the flag, so if in fact Scheer had not passed before we completed the last lap, Benson may reappropriate that top position.
Benson also simply may not have noticed the yellow flag. St. Amant, oh, what a tough break. That's the next white line you see. There it is. That's the start-finish line. There's Gary in the Wind Spirit Thunderbird. He, as Rob mentioned, was running in 6th position. He loses a lap this time. It's been a tough day for this team after a 2nd place finish and a strong 11th place finish a week ago. Russ Gamester, their rookie contender, crashed out early on, and St. Amant, after having a great race, finds himself sitting in the pits maybe here during these last 10 laps. We're down to 141 laps, and Scheer has been repositioned back in front. Apparently, Johnny just didn't see the yellow flag.
And I wonder if, again, as we have seen repeatedly under caution, if that's once again going to hand the edge back to Benson.
Well, we've had 10 yellow flag laps and numerous lead changes. 9 lead changes among 5 drivers, and several of them in the last 10 laps. This could be interesting right to the very end. The 1993 AC Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it wins, it works. And by Mr. Goodwrench, the GM expert at participating GM dealerships. And by Armor All. There is a fountain of youth, and we own the patent. All right, now officially 142 laps are in the record books. Remember that Benson was the points leader coming into today's race. Eddie was second. Tony Raines had a very quiet race in that Ernie Roselli car. He was third ranked. Tom Harrington fourth. And we are going back to green flag, and Joe Shear, who's got to be a local favorite. He's a guy who's raced here many times. We're not that far from the Illinois line, and even though Joe Shear has a home address in a different state, he's like a local driver here.
Still over a dozen cars remaining on the lead lap, but it appears that these two drivers will settle it. Joe Shear, a sometimes person to kind of come in and shake things up in ASA, not running a regular schedule, but Johnny Benson in quest of his first career ASA championship. And again, you can see Shear's car wiggling as he comes through turn number 4. At this point, Benson's machine appears just a tad more stable.
Incidentally, for you Dayton, Ohio, and Larry Moore fans, he was the reason for the last yellow, and just as we went green, the right front corner of that car went down. Apparently, he had at least cracked or broken a spindle in his slight wall contact, and unfortunately it broke right after we returned to green. So Larry Moore sits in the pits, and here comes Benson again. Oh boy, this could be very exciting right down to the end. Coming up for lap number 145 this time. Benson knows that his best chance appears to be right after the yellow flags, but not quite enough this time.
Johnny Benson, since we came to know him as a Rookie of the Year back in 1990, has exuded all of the qualities that it takes a champion to make. He has the ability behind the wheel of the race car. He has an ability to focus on the task at hand. Yet he has a way with his fans. He has a way with the media. And he would be a fine champion, and he seems to be a man that will not be denied in 1993.
Benson started out the 1992 season with 2 wins in the first 3 races and 3 poles in the first 4 races. So he's starting this year out just like last year. He has only 1 win of those first 2 races, however, so to duplicate the performance of a year ago, Benson would need to win this race, but Joe Shear appears to have just a little bit of an edge.
Still 3+ miles to go in this race. Joe Shear and Johnny Benson now have separated themselves from the car that remains third, Jay Sauter, but he's getting some pressure from Bob Seneca. You can see as they move down into turn number 1, Seneca would appear to have that spot, and he does wrestle it away from Jay Sauter.
The Bluebird flutters by the Jaybird and moves into the 3rd position. Mike Eddy, or make that Bob Seneca, get a little bit ahead of myself, takes 3rd. Eddy now moves up to challenge Jay Sauter. Boy, these guys have seen enough of each other so far this year.
And that time in turn number 3, Benson a little overly aggressive, slipped over the edge, off the cushion and into the loose stuff, and lost about 8 car lengths, and that may be the end of his challenge for the win. You can see there's 3rd, 4th, and 5th right together. Just out of the frame is Harold Fair, who's come back after his first pit stop of the race, battling his way through traffic to run 8.
2 laps to go. Streaming down the back straightaway, there's 3rd, 4th, 5th. Mike Eddy, 5th place in the race. Did not have a particularly successful weekend in qualifying. Crashed very hard in practice. Had to start this race way back in about 30th position. We come down and the white flag extends over Joe Shear. Joe Shear goes to the high side of the lap car of Yale Conley. Johnny Benson Jr., points leader, coming in. Joe Shear not going after the championship, so this will be a great points race for John Benson Jr., but this one looks like it's going to go to Joe Shear.
Mike Eddy will move in to challenge Jay Sauter for 4th position. Joe Shear with just a turn to go. Finished 4th here a year ago. Only 4 ASA races, 24th
Look
at Milwaukee.
This. Shear goes very high around
and
Alec
almost loses it.
And Benson tries to pull one off. And there goes 3rd place Bob Seneca and 4th place Jay Sauter. But Joe Shear pulls off the surprise of all the ASA veterans, and he wins here at Milwaukee. Chances are one that was expected by nobody.
And that was his car owner, Fred Nielsen, the man with that hat getting slaps on the back. Congratulations from his crew.
Joe Shear, realizing the dreams of drivers like Parnelli Jones, Roger Ward, Norm Nelson, Butch Hartman, and Scott Hansen. He's a winner at the Milwaukee Mile. Here at the Milwaukee Mile, the two-way communications equipment was provided by Racing Electronics, the official communications of ASA. And the man with the best communications today was number 36, Joe Shear. Ralph?
Joe, you know, you had your car running so good all day, but Benson really gave you a run on the outside. Did you expect that, and how did you get back around it?
Oh, he really surprised me. I had trouble getting going after a yellow, and his car was going better than mine for a couple laps after the yellow, but he really surprised me with the outside move. I didn't expect that.
Joe Shear, the winner here this afternoon at the Milwaukee Mile.
Joe Shear, not only the race winner, but other drivers in contention for the points championship this year. Jay Sauter, John Benson Jr., Mike Eddy, maybe Bob Seneker. They too all had good races. The race average speed was slowed to 86 miles per hour. We had an awful lot of yellow flags.
The unofficial top 5, Joe Shear the winner, Johnny Benson Jr. second, third to Bob Seneker's own car number 84, Jay Sauter fourth, Mike Eddy fifth, 6th through 10th, Randy McDonald, Harold Fair, Tom Harrington, Kent Stauffer, good run, and Dennis Lampman.
So another of the great American Racing Series events is in the books, and we've had somewhat of a surprise winner, although to the followers of Joe Shear, they're not surprised at all. Until next week from the Nashville Fairgrounds Raceway, this is Larry NUBER for Rob Albright and Ralph Shaheen, and we'll see you at the races.